Well, hello. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I am super excited to be back with another Tech Tips 411 Jen's 10 Ideas series. So thank you so much for those of you that are joined live. If you're here, let me know that you're here by dropping your name in the chat and where you're tuning in from. If you're watching this from the future, thanks so much for tuning in. So today we're going to be talking about ideas for using Google Classroom. So this is kind of an interesting one because I'm going to give you 10 tips for Google Classroom, some things you can use with Google Classroom and just maybe some best practices for Google Classroom, just kind of some ideas to level up. So let's go ahead and dive in. For those of you that I might not know and you just stumbled across this video, my name is Jennifer Hall and I'm an educational technology specialist. And what that means is I provide technology training for teachers in the district. I work in Atlanta Public Schools and I provide planning and training for teachers to best implement instructional technology in their standards-based lessons. So great to connect with you. Thanks so much for tuning in. So our goal is very simple. If you haven't tuned into one of these before, this is my 10 ideas series. That means I'm going to give you 10 ideas pretty quick. These are fast and furious in terms of I'm going to give you an idea and hopefully you gain a tip or two that you can implement and use with your students or in your practice. So tip number one, if you're not already doing this, and some folks are already doing it, with the Bitmoji classroom craze, they've been creating really jazzy headers. But if you're not already doing it, you can create a custom classroom header. I'm going to have a link in the description of this video for a template that you can use either in Google Drawings or Google Slides so you can create your own. But what you might not know is that you can also put in animated GIFs. So that means you can design something and turn it into a GIF. So for the folks that are familiar with tall tweets, it's a great way to create an animated GIF. So you can do it header size and export it as a GIF and you can upload it. Now, I have a lot of questions that I get asked about using the header when you put in a custom header, how it grays it out. So you're going to want to use a white background so that you can see your images. It's still going to have that gray layer on it, and that is an accessibility feature built in by Google. So they know that when you use their images, that the screen reader would recognize the title. When you put up your own images, unfortunately, they're not sure. So that's why it has that grayed out, and that is an accessibility feature. But tip number one, if you're not already doing it, create a custom classroom header. And if you want to really level up, use animated GIFs to jazz it up. And a bonus tip I would say is that have your students make it a competition, give out the template and let them design their headers and rotate those out each week so you can spotlight student creations in the header of your Google Classroom. So there's tip number one. All right. Let's take a look at tip number two. I've got to give a shout out to my Google guru friend, Jeremy Badner. He's the one that told me this tip. And when he told me this, I was like, that makes too much sense. So I have to share this with my teachers all the time. Create a today topic in your Google Classroom, especially if you're virtual learning right now. What would you normally do in a Google, even if you had Google Classroom in your class and the kids came in and they had devices, you would still use your whiteboard to write on the board kind of what your agenda was. I mean, that's just what teachers do. So think of the today topic as a whiteboard option. So when we say that, that means that make that topic and then anything that's going on for today is going to live there. And what's great about Google Classroom now, it's very easy for you to drag and drop and move your resources from one topic to the next. So if you have that today topic, that means that especially your younger learners are going to be like, oh, that's what we're working on today. That makes sense. And so you can do one of two things. Under today, you could have everything under one assignment and all the links are there, or you could have multiple links if there's separate things, if something you need to separate out. So tip number two, definitely use that today topic to differentiate what students need to work on. For younger learners, it just really helps out because I have a lot of students that say, what am I supposed to be working on? I don't understand. So if you have it under today, that's what we're working on today. And at the end of the day, you just drag it down if you've organized it by units or topics or other different topics you want to use. Okay. So that's tip number two, create a today topic. I would also advise, because we have so much going on right now, that you create a resources topic for frequently used items. Have that live at the bottom of your Google Classroom so that students know it's called resources. That's where I can find any links that I might need access to, like your syllabus or your class website or anything else. So I use it in any of the Google Classrooms I use with my training, because I use Google Classroom as my method of training. Like right now, I've got 5 schools I'm directly supporting in APS, and I have a Google Classroom for each one of them. And I use that as a model for how to organize your Google Classroom. So I have that resources section down there with any links that I want my participants to have access to. So that is tip number 3. If you haven't already done so, create a topic that just says resources or important information. Okay. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is to create a tutorial topic or a Zoom link topic or something like that. So I'm going to say tutorial topic for this particular example because I worked with a teacher last year. And when we went out for quarantine, they still had like tutorial times. And the kids were always like, well, what time is tutorial? I never can see where it is. If you make it a topic and you let it live at the top, you can drag, because you can drag and drop. I can bring this to the top on the days that I have tutorial, and I can have the date because now this is bold and standing out here. I've got tutorial, my date, my time. And then after Tuesday, April 21st is done, then I would go in and I would change that out to my next tutorial date. And then right there, I've got that link to however you're going to connect with students for tutorial. So I think that's a really important one. That even I was working with a teacher that was an AP teacher using Google Classroom. And she was like, that was a lifesaver because the kids were like, when do I meet with you? How do I meet with you? And so you can have that live up there as your tutorial. You could also do the same thing with your dedicated Zoom link. Like in APS, we're using Zoom now. If you're using Google Meet, we know it's automatically linked in and you can turn that on inside of your Google Classroom, but you can have your dedicated link. But I think that tutorial is just a great way because it stands out and shows students that's where we're going to meet that's at a certain time. And because I can drag and drop this very easily, I just bring it up to the top for that day to remind them what time we're meeting and what day. So that is tip number 4, a tutorial topic. So those of you folks that are tuning in right now, if you've got any questions, please feel free to let me know that you're here and drop a question or comment in the chat if you've got it. So far, we've covered 4 tips. What do we think so far? Any good tips so far? Let's take a look at tip number 5. So you might have noticed my jazzy, let's go back here real quick. You might have noticed my jazzy looking topics. And what I did was I used this fancy text generator to create bold, italicized, and underlined text for topics or instructions. As much as I love Google Classroom, oh, look at that. How are you creating the circle fonts? Karen, it's like I planted you in the audience to ask that question. This is exactly how. I'm using this magical text generator to create the awesome font. So I'm going to show you guys that. So thanks, Karen, for that question. Using fancy text generator, I can do bold, italicized, or underlined text. I can use it for topics to make it stand out in my topics. I can also use it for inside my instructions. And a bonus tip, you can also use it inside of Google Forms because you have no formatting in Google Forms. And I know as a test creator that sometimes you need to have underlined text, you need to have bold text for key vocabulary for things. So this works really well. So I'm going to hop over here real quick and show you guys. So this is font. This is a website. So you're going to want to go to this. I'm going to put the link in the description of this video, but it's called Font Generator. Okay. So I can type my text in here. So I'm going to type in today. It's going to give me all of these options right here. So that's how I was able to get the circles. I can get some funky fonts. Some of them are pretty outlandish and you're not going to want to use them. But for the most part, you get a couple more options. So you got some italicized, some bold. So this is how you get italicized. I will point out, like, I like this little box one is good. When you copy and paste it into Google Classroom, it's going to use the formatting color from that class. You're not going to get different colors. I wish that's not an option. But maybe I usually like to use that circle one. So I'm going to go back up here and we're going to grab the one. I like this one. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to hop over here to my Google Classroom that I've got set up. So there's the today. There's one I've already created. I would just click create a topic. I would paste that in. So now I've got my circles. But you'll also notice here's a bonus. There's the next tip. So we got fancy text. Pretty cool. All right. We like that idea. If I go to my next one, you'll notice tip number 6 is to use emojis for topics, bullets, and instructions. So you'll notice that on my today topic, what emoji did I use? I used the calendar one. So there's an emoji keyboard. Now, technically, you can use the emoji keyboard that's built into your Windows device by hitting Windows P, and it'll pull it up and you can look through the ones you want, or on Mac, you can do that as well. I like this one because I can search for exactly what I want. So if you'll notice, I'm going to show you guys here real quick. All right, I'm going to hop over here because I did not share the whole screen. I'm going to do something magical here, and we're going to say share the whole screen so you can see this magic happening. There we go. All right. So up here is this pop-up. It lives up here. So I can go up here and I can search for whichever ones I want. I can keyword search for it. So if I want a calendar, I've got some options, and I kind of like this one. I'm going to go back to this topic and I'm going to paste that in the front. Now, notice some of them don't format very pretty. They don't look good. You might have to shop a little bit. I'm going to go back here and get one more, try another one. Sometimes you have to try different ones. So, and here's why. Depending on the browser you're in, you've got Chrome or Safari or Firefox or whatever, your red car might look like a red car on Chrome, but it might be a blue car on Safari. So you might be mindful of things like that. But I'm going to put in calendar again. I'm going to go with this one. Notice when I try that one, how that one turned out to be a much better looking one. So it's just a matter of trial and error sometimes. And so I'm going to click add, and there is my new topic, just like I just created there. That was just a little bit different looking calendar. And now I've got a calendar emoji. I've got my today topic, and this stands out. And you'll notice over on the left-hand side over here, these right here help to differentiate my topics. This just makes it a little bit easier to see inside of the Google Classroom for students to be like, oh, there's a visual cue. Great for your younger learners, your diverse learners. And you can even use emojis to come up with a system. So for example, I use the question so that it stands out. That's a question assignment. If it's a writing or there's a video assignment, like if I want you to watch a video, I'm going to use the clapper. So that's the little clapper icon right over here. And right here, there you go. And notice I've got different resources, different links, so they stand out. So that's just a great way to highlight different types of resources inside of your Google Classroom. So that is tip number 6, using emojis. And what's great is inside my Google Classroom, I can also do this. So if I go down to, I'm going to go to one, Adobe Spark. Notice I've got different bullet points in here. So that's if you have an assignment that has multiple steps to it, you can do step 1, step 2, step 3. So you might put the clapper, the video icon to show we're going to watch a video. Then we're going to do a writing task. So I'm going to have the emoji that's the piece of paper and the pencil. Then you might have the talking emoji. So it looks like now we're going to do a speaking task or a discussion task. You can use the emoji that's the two people together. So now it's a think, pair, share activity. So you could come up with your own key to put in here for assignments under instructions for your students. So that is tip number 6, using emojis for topics, bullets, and instructions. What do we think? Yes, I love it. Celeste says, nice visual cues. It's great for all learners. I got to be honest. I do this in my PDs for my adults, and it just makes it stand out. And everybody invariably goes, well, how did you do that? I want to do that with my Google Classroom. And now you guys can too. So emojis, topics, bullet points, instructions, definitely do that. All right, number 7. So the first couple tips were getting organized and getting your Google Classroom to be kind of more visually engaging for your learners. Next up, let's leverage the power of Google Classroom and pushing out assignments to your students. So I would suggest using templates, creating your own custom templates, or I've got some that I'm going to share with you guys that are great to use that highlight the spotlight on strategies, which are quick, easy to use digital strategies for students to engage in digital content. So I have all of these templates. And the reason I like templates is that I can push out an assignment into Google Classroom and I can decide a couple of things. Do I, one, want every student to have their own copy so they're working in their own space? Or do I want them to work in a collaborative space so that I, as a teacher, only have to open up one document? So I often get a lot of teachers that ask me, hey, Jen, I have this activity. It's not something that's graded. It's more of a participation thing. And I want to be able to not open up 30 different assignments. I'd rather look at one. So being able to use like a template, like the 3 truths and a lie, where you push it out one template to all students and they all engage in it, is a great way to leverage that. And here's what's great about doing this during distance learning is that when you push out a template that's in Google Slides. This is my favorite way to do this, is in Google Slides. I can go from over here on the left-hand side, which is linear, like presentation view, to grid view. And then I can scroll through while students are working on this collaboratively. I can monitor my students in that one document. So if I gave out the assignment of 3 truths and a lie, after we've engaged in content, we've watched a video on penguins and their migration patterns. And then I'm going to say, hey, write your 3 truthful statements based on the video you just watched and one that's false. Now I can monitor students working on this in their own individual document. And then I can say, all right, partner up with somebody, and you can randomly be like 2 and 3 together, 3 and 4, however you want to do the numbers, and students can work together collaboratively to check each other's work. Now, if you're one of those teachers that's like, yeah, if I share out a slide deck and I have 30 students participating in it, are they going to be looking at each other's work? Possibly, most likely. That's what children do. What you can do is you could just set a deadline for students in your own document, open up a Google Doc, write your statements, and then set a timer for when they need to come and paste it into this collaborative document. That way, again, you've captured their work in one place instead of having to go back and open up 30 different documents, or in the case of 4 classes with 30 kids each, 120 documents. Okay. So there we go. That is tip number 7. So my number 8 is kind of a cool way to use Google Slides, which is to create a back channel that lives in your Google Classroom. So by creating a collaborative slide deck that can live under your resources page, so students can always find it, you can have them fill out questions or comments in there, and it's always going to be there, because if they do questions or comments inside of Google Classroom, which is a great tool, they're attached to that particular assignment. But if you have this back channel where you could say for, activity 1, questions and comments, you can always go back to it and use this back channel format. So I think it's a really cool way to use a dedicated link in your resources tab for your students. So using the power of Google Slides and collaboration, but attach it under your resources, or you could label it as its own topic, back channel, so you can bring it to the top to remind students this is where they can put those questions and comments. And because it's open for your students, this can be something that if they have a question later on after the lesson, they can go in and add it to the question deck. So you've got that as a record. So that is tip number 8, to use a back channel inside of your Google Classroom. Using Google Slides is one solution. I've also created a collab pad in Google Drawings, which is kind of like Padlet, but having that as a dedicated option as well. So using a back channel, having a dedicated link inside of your Google Classroom is tip number 8. All right. Tip number 9, another shout out to my friend Jeremy Badner, who gave me this tip. And I was like, what? This is an extension called Talk and Comment. How many of you guys have younger learners that struggle with reading instructions? That's one of the issues. Or typical student, even middle and high school, that they're readers, but they just are not, they're not good about reading instructions, or they like to ask you something multiple times. How many times have you had to repeat your instructions? So Talk and Comment is a really powerful extension. It's a Google extension that you install. And once you install it, you have the ability to go in and record a message and attach it as a voice note to instructions for an assignment. Okay. So this is actually, I just recorded me going through and doing this. And so you can attach it and it appears as a video, or excuse me, as an audio file. So I can click and play and I can hear that voice note from my teacher. So what's really cool is once you install it, it's going to be that little microphone that lives right there on the right-hand side of your screen. You just hit record, do your voice note. Once you're done recording your instructions, you copy the link, everything up to where it says voice note. All right. I'm going to copy that link. I'm going to go in, I'm going to create my material so I can attach it to an existing assignment. I'm going to click add. I'm going to click over here where it says link. I'm going to paste that in. And when I paste it in, watch what happens. It populates a play button. So your students know it's something they need to play. Even your younger learners are going to be like, oh, there's a play button. That's something that's audio. And remember, also, you can use your emojis to put the little audio icon to remind them that that's going to be a button that they play some instructions. So the talking comment extension is very powerful for you to be able to put voice notes in there for instructions for your students so they can play them over and over and over again if they need it. So tip number 9 is Talk and Comment, the Chrome extension that allows you guys to put voice notes in your Google Classroom. What do we think? Is that a good option? Is that going to be good for your diverse learners? I think that's a pretty powerful one right there. And our final tip, there's our Talk and Comment. You can go down there and install it. Very easy. I'll put the link in the description for you guys to get that. And my last and final tip is doing a little mashup of one of my favorite tools, which is Wakelet, and using that with Google Classroom. And here's why. I love Google Classroom. It's pretty simple, so it's easy for students to navigate, but there's some things as a teacher that I wish it could do. For example, if I'm creating a list of an assignment and I've got 5 links for that assignment, I want to attach them all together. So life is easy for assignment 1. It's going to have, for day 1, it's going to have the syllabus link. It's going to have the Flipgrid link. It's going to have the rubric. It's going to have, so I've got 4 or 5 links. You can do that in Google Classroom. The problem comes up when you realize that either 1, you want to send different links to different students, or 2, you realize, oh man, I wanted this link to be number 2 and this link to be number 3, and actually I have them out of order. You can't just reorder the links. You have to remove them and add the link in again, which is okay. It's just a little time consuming. So what I would suggest, if you know you have a number of links that you want to push out to your students, or you really want to level up and organize your lessons in a hyperdoc style model, you can use Wakelet, because Wakelet easily shares to Google Classroom. And so you can have everything for that lesson, the lesson progression, for example, the 5E model, the engage, the explore, the elaborate, the evaluate, all of that is there in one package for students. And as a teacher, I can go in and I can make multiple copies. I can differentiate because we've planned for the middle. I've got that standard hyperdoc, and then I can change up or down based on my learners. And I can share that Wakelet into Google Classroom very easily to certain students or all students so that they can engage in the content. And I don't have to worry about the order of my links inside of Google Classroom. And also because you can give instructions before each link, like do this, you're going to watch, do this, watch the video, engage in this content. So that is tip number 10, which is to include Wakelet with your Google Classroom so that you can organize your link and push out a lesson that way. So if you're not familiar with Wakelet, I actually did one of these 10 ideas series on Wakelet with 10 ideas for using Wakelet. And I've also got a video that's all about Wakelet that you might want to check out if you're not familiar with Wakelet. So I would definitely recommend that. So there we go. 10 ideas. 10 tips. What do we think? This was kind of straightforward, just some ways to level up with your Google Classroom and a couple of tips that help you engage your learners and organize your content a little bit more. So there it is. If you have any questions or comments, please drop those in the chat. If you're watching this from the future, let me know what you thought. If you found this session beneficial, give it a thumbs up and like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tomorrow, as these continue, tomorrow I'm going to be talking about 10 ideas for using Google Forms to engage your learners. So tune in for that. Thank you guys so very much for your time. I appreciate it. I hope you found this beneficial, and I will see you on the next one.